Okay, everybody, Shabbat Shalom. So on Monday, the Supreme Court struck down a Louisiana abortion law that would have effectively restricted abortion to only one provider in the entire state of Louisiana. Now, Jewish tradition cherishes the sanctity of life, including the potential of life which a pregnant woman carries within her. But Jewish tradition also affirms that abortion is sometimes necessary. There are some people who believe that life begins at conception, but under Jewish law, this is simply not the case. In the Talmud asserts that a fetus is quote-unquote mere fluid before 40 days of gestation. And following this period, the fetus is considered a physical part of the pregnant individual's body, not yet having life of its own or independent rights. The fetus is not viewed as separate from the parent's body until the onset of labor and childbirth. So since the Supreme Court made this ruling, and issues of abortion and reproductive rights have for many decades have been somewhat contentious in our society, I thought it would be good to study some Jewish texts on the topic. So there are some source sheets that are scattered around. Kaplan's, there's some on the row behind you there, if you didn't get one. It's a little like a scavenger hunt. I just place them on the chairs and see where people sit. So the primary source that speaks to the issue of abortion in the Torah is the first source in the book of Exodus. And the source says, "When men fight, and one of them pushes a pregnant woman, and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined." And the interesting phrase here is a miscarriage results, but the Torah says no other damage ensues. So that begs the question: well, what is the other damage that could possibly be? And so the Torah goes on to say, "But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, etc., etc." A passage that we know fairly well, this idea of life for life that the Torah talks about. So presumably the other damage that the Torah is talking about is if God forbid in this shoving, the mother of the baby dies. But for the fetus, it's not life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It's essentially rewarding damages. So that gives some insight on the Torah's view of a fetus, of an unborn child. So according to this source, abortion is not considered murder in the same way that if someone takes the life of a fully living human being, if you will. The source number 2 is from the Mishnah, and this is also really a very important authoritative text. And I apologize, by the way, it's a little gruesome, but the rabbis didn't mess around. I mean, they dealt with everything about human existence, and this is a case of that, I guess. So this is a Jewish teaching that goes back, some at least 2,000 years. Source number 2 says, "If a woman's labor becomes life-threatening, the fetus is dismembered in her womb and then taken out limb by limb, for her life comes before the life of the fetus. Once most of the child has emerged, it is not to be touched, for one life is not put aside for another." Now, the third source is from the Rambam, Moses Maimonides, who Jewish scholar, commentator on the Torah, creator of a code of Jewish law called the Mishnah Torah, which this source is from. He lived in the 12th and 13th centuries, first in Spain, and then he lived in Alexandria, Egypt. many consider him to be the wisest Jew perhaps of all time, certainly since Moses and Solomon. He was absolutely brilliant. If he were here right now, he would probably agree. He had a reputation for being a little bit of a little bit cocky. But anyway, so the Rambam on this passage, the above passage from the Mishnah, says the following. This is a negative commandment. One must not take pity on the life of a rodef, or a pursuer. And I'll get back to that in a minute. Therefore, the sages taught, if a pregnant woman's labor becomes life-threatening, it is permitted to dismember the fetus in her womb, either by medication or by hand, for it is like a rodef who is pursuing her to kill her. But from the moment his head emerges, he is not to be touched, for one life is not to be put aside for another, for this is the natural course of things. So the Rambam invokes the concept of rodef. Rodef is a pursuer, someone who is chasing after you. If someone is chasing after you to threaten your life, you are permitted to defend yourself. I'm not getting into like stand your ground laws and things like that, but if your life is in real and imminent danger, then you can defend yourself. You can stop the rodef, as it were. So the Rambam says that the Mishnah is saying that the fetus, if the fetus is threatening the life of the mother, then the fetus is like a rodef, is like pursuing the mother's life to do her severe harm. And the mother takes precedence. That's Jewish law. That much is really clear. Now, what's interesting, what I never thought about before, is that the Mishnah says once most of the child has emerged, it is not to be touched. But the Rambam says from the moment his head emerges, he is not to be touched. And the Mishnah, the Hebrew there is clear. It's rovo, which means the majority of the fetus. So I didn't have a chance to look into that if it has to be the head or just the head crowns or if it's actually the majority of the body of the fetus. But it's an interesting distinction between the two sources. Now, the fourth source is proceedings of the Rabbinical Assembly, which is the conservative movement's union of rabbis. It's an international union, if you will. We have a law committee that adjudicates on issues of Jewish law. And Rabbis Ben Zion Boxer and Castle Abelson, who are, Rabbi Boxer is no longer alive, Zichrono Livracha, but Cass Abelson is. So this is what their comment on this. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. They wrote, Jewish tradition does not permit abortion on demand. Abortion is not birth control for Jewish tradition. That is not acceptable. However, it sanctions abortion under some circumstances. The Rabbinical Assembly Committee on Jewish Law and Standards takes the view that an abortion is justifiable if a continuation of pregnancy might cause the mother severe physical or psychological harm, or when the fetus is judged by competent medical opinion as severely defective. Now here we're getting into some gray area. For these rabbis from the law committee said that the idea of rodef, that the fetus is pursuing the mother, it's not just about, physical harm, but it's also about severe emotional and psychological harm. And that's hard to define. So that's tricky. And also, the term severely defective is a difficult term. Some would even say that that's a troubling term. So here we're getting into gray areas, but the rabbis are trying to understand the law and protecting the life of the mother and protecting the well-being of the mother. So again, I would say that certainly if the fetus is going to cause severe physical harm to the mother, and possibly the mother might die in childbirth, I think Jewish law is clear. where some rabbis, some authorities interpret further about emotional distress or how much physical distress would be permissible. There it gets into great debates depending on who you ask. So this is certainly not a clear-cut topic. At least in terms of physical, severe physical harm, it's more clear than the other questions that these texts raise. So the debate will continue, but I think it's important for us as Jews to know that we do have sources that talk about this. We do have, we have sources that inform us and that can help us with our ongoing discussions and debate on the most difficult issues that we face. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, everybody.